Just then, Talion heard an earth-shattering roar. It seemed to bellow through the woods, the wind kicking up, the trees swaying in the breeze, an intense wind that carried it. He swore he could even feel the ground trembling as it echoed through the woods. "Whoa, that sounds like a big one," the doppelganger said, cheerfully looking in the direction of this sound of the roar. "Well, I hope you got your running shoes on, because I don't think we're fighting this one." "Shut up," Talion said, yelling at the doppelganger. "I don't need you distracting me," he shouted, as he began to hear cracking and snapping. It sounded like the sound of entire trees being torn down, the sound of large impacts, like giant boulders being thrown around. Oh no, not boulders, footsteps. Could that be it? In the moment, he began to try to measure the space between the large thunderous impacts, the vibrations he could feel in the ground, and after only a moment or two, it was clear that it was footsteps, massive footsteps, and they were getting closer. The closer they got, the more he could hear it, the sound of trees snapping, and that roar getting ever the louder. "Yeah, I'm thinking that now's a good time to run," the doppelganger said. "Shut up," Talion replied, still glaring into the distance, trying to see if he could make out a figure, see what was heading in his direction. And all at once he did. A massive form, seeming to be made out of what looked like the fog itself, just condensed, heavier, denser, having physical form. It was charging in his direction, a giant head sticking out of a cloud of billowing white smoke and fog that emanated from it as it moved in his direction. The head was monstrous, like some sort of giant animal, razor-sharp teeth, rows of them, yellow eyes that beamed out light like they were the sun, long arms billowing that fog and steam, with massive hands at the end of them, grabbing whole trees and tearing them from the ground as it made its way through, unable to pass in between the trees. It was just tearing them down, ripping them out as it made its way closer, and it was not moving slowly. "Run, run, now's a good time to run," the doppelganger said. Talion hated to agree with anything that he said, but gauging the situation, this was most definitely not something he was going to fight. Like it or not, he was going to have to do what the doppelganger said. He turned around and started to run, trying to tear his way away from it, as this massive lumbering monstrosity tore its way through the trees, ripping the forest apart as it trampled its way through after him, destroying everything in its path. Talion was running as fast as he could, but it seemed like that monster was gaining ground. It even felt like it was picking up speed, moving faster, beginning to close the distance between him and it. "You know this is all your fault, right?" he heard a voice announce from somewhere in the fog as he ran. He couldn't make out from where, but he knew the voice. It was his. "You're really dealing with all of this just so you can save a woman who's not even your mother. I mean, really, don't you even care about your real mother? You say you love the mother who raised you, but did you even hear the story he told about what was happening with your real mother? The sorrow she was experiencing. She's just sitting around all day, every day, thinking about you, her beloved child, crying in a room all alone, praying every moment of every day that you come back to her, clinging on to a single possession that you held 10 years ago, the only thing that she has left of you. And yet here you are, trying to fight train and survive this hellscape that your new teacher has created for you. All so that you can take her wish away from her. So that that loving mother will never see her child again. Never see you again. Never hold you in her arms. Never love you and cherish you like she wants to. All so you don't have to put up with the discomfort of separating from a woman who isn't even your mother. Do you realize how cruel that is? Have you even thought about it? How long are you going to make her suffer like that? How long is she going to have to bear the loneliness until you come home and still you're here fighting for this? You say that you'll kill the real you, make the illusion the reality. Also, you can stay with your mother, but that's only because you're selfish, isn't it? No, you'd rather stay here and play human. It's more convenient. Having to change would just be too much trouble. The suffering of someone who loves you more than anything, who can't sustain their existence without you, it's meaningless, right? As long as you're happy here with your fake human mother, the voice called out as he rushed through the woods, that massive monster barreling towards him, closing the distance with every second. Talion was completely overwhelmed. He was terrified that this thing was going to catch up with him. If the other illusions that his teacher had presented were any kind of a standard to go by, then getting hit by this thing was not going to feel good. And all the while he has this doppelganger screaming in his ear. The most painful thing about it is, at this point, you can't really disagree with him. He's right. His real mother, the one who gave birth to him, is suffering, all alone, clinging to a memory and a hope that she could hold him in his arms again. And he's fighting to keep away from her, to take her dream away. He thought to himself as he dashed through the woods frantically. But what does that even mean? What does love even mean? Is his mother's love more important? Is the suffering of his original mother meaningless? Should it not matter to him at all? Just because she didn't raise him? She wasn't able to be there? Thinking about it, that was so cruel. How could he possibly believe something like that? If you're supposed to protect the people who love you, to watch out for them, to bring happiness to their lives, how could he just ignore the pain that his original mother was in? The loneliness that she must be feeling. Talion was running through the woods with everything he had, but still he couldn't help it. Tears began to run down his face as he ran, being caught in the wind as he passed, blowing in odd ways across his face as he left them in the air behind him, all the while thinking, how could he be so cruel? How could he be so cruel to someone who loved him more than anything, loved him so much that when he was gone, nothing else mattered. And yet none of it stopped the fact that he didn't want to abandon his mother Melody, who loved him, who raised him, who would give anything to protect him. Someone who also could not bear to live without him. Why did it feel like this, Talion thought. Love's supposed to be a good feeling. It's supposed to make you happy. So then why do I feel like this? Why can't I make the people I love happy? That's what you're supposed to do, he thought to himself. He was so consumed in that thought, those ideas rushing through his mind, that he completely lost track of how fast he was moving, or how close the monster behind him had grown. By the time he tried to take stock of the situation, looking behind him, it was already too late. A massive hand was reaching down, grasping in his direction. It was enormous, so big in fact, that with a single grasp, one solid grip, it encompassed Talion's entire body, and everything went dark. All that he could feel was pressure all around him, crushing down on him. And then, A sudden swing of inertia, as if he had suddenly started moving very fast in a different direction, and before he knew it, the pressure around him was gone. He opened his eyes, and he was flying through the air. The monster had hurled him right over the top of the woods. He was flying nearly 100 foot above it all, soaring through the air uncontrollably, heading in God knows what direction.